My husband ended our marriage over text. I'm leaving you for a 20-year-old and taking all our money. I simply replied, good luck. He didn't realize I was one step ahead. Can you believe the sheer audacity? I'm Claire, and at 38, I received a text from my husband that was so callous, so unbelievably arrogant, it actually made me smile. He thought he was delivering a knockout blow, gleefully announcing he'd emptied our joint account and was off to Miami with his 20-year-old girlfriend. Oh, darling, little did he know his grand exit was just the first domino falling in my meticulously laid plan. It was just another busy afternoon at my boutique. I was helping Mrs. Peterson pick out a silk scarf, my usual cheerful self, when my phone buzzed. The message flashed across the screen. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account. My world should have shattered, right? My hands should have trembled, my voice cracked. But they didn't. Not a flicker. I calmly helped Mrs. Peterson, my voice unwavering, my smile in place. The only outward sign that my husband of years had just nuked our entire life via text was a subtle, almost imperceptible tightening around my eyes. Once she left, her purchase carefully wrapped in our signature silver paper, I typed my reply, good luck. That was it. My name is Claire, and at 38, I just received the most brutal, most cold-blooded goodbye in history. But while Mark was probably picturing me collapsing in tears, gloating over his grand escape, I was simply locking up my boutique for the day, a calm resolve settling deep within me. The truth is, the signs had been there for months. I wasn't naive. The late nights at work that never quite matched his pay deposits, the sudden password changes on his phone, his sudden obsession with the gym, the new clothes he bought, desperate to recapture his youth. 3 months ago, I found a receipt for dinner for two at some fancy restaurant, on a night he swore he was working late. That very evening, I quietly opened a separate bank account. A week later, when he smoothly suggested we combine our accounts to simplify things, I just smiled, agreed cheerfully, and moved all my personal savings into my new, secret account. The joint account he'd just emptied? It held just enough to keep him from getting suspicious, about 2 months' worth of regular deposits. The rest? Safely tucked away, along with meticulous records of every suspicious transaction he'd made over the past year. Oh, he thought he was so clever. My phone buzzed again. Another gem from Mark. Don't bother begging. Melissa and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Melissa, the new receptionist at his office. I'd met her at the company Christmas party. Watched her giggle a little too loudly at Mark's tired jokes, noticed the way her hand lingered on his arm when she thought no one was looking. She was young enough to be his daughter. Naive enough to believe she was special. I didn't even dignify that text with a response. Instead, I called my lawyer, the same one I'd consulted 2 months ago when I'd found those hotel charges on our credit card statement. It's time, I said, my voice calm as ever. He just made his move. Her reply was equally calm, almost a sigh of relief. The papers are ready. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to have him served in Miami? No rush, I told her. Let him think he's won first. Another text from Mark. He just couldn't help himself. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger, after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop. The successful boutique I'd built from scratch that generated more income than his middle management position, whose profits I'd meticulously kept separate from our joint finances. I couldn't help but smile. Oh, the certified letters that would soon be greeting him in Miami. He could enjoy his moment of triumph for now. It wouldn't last. I spent that evening in our house. No, wait, my house. I inherited it from my grandmother, and crucially, I'd kept it in my name despite Mark's constant, nagging suggestions to add him to the deed. Another lucky instinct that paid off. While organizing the paperwork my lawyer would need, I found our wedding album. Mark looked so different then, before his midlife crisis had transformed him into a ridiculous caricature of his former self. These days, he wore shirts too tight for his softening middle, tried too hard to connect with the somethings at his office, using slang that sounded utterly ridiculous coming from a 45-year-old man. My phone kept buzzing, a steady stream of texts, each one more condescending than the last. I've been planning this for months. Melissa understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine, maybe you'll find someone more your own age. Already told my family, they agree we grew apart. It's nobody's fault, really. I screenshotted every single one, adding them to my growing evidence folder. Let him dig his hole deeper, I thought. My lawyer would absolutely love his casual admission of premeditation, his gleeful announcement about emptying our account. Then, the last text caught my eye. By the way, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift, LOL. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I immediately called the credit card company. Mrs. Harrison speaking, I said, my voice steady. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. Of course, ma'am. Can you identify the charges? 2 first-class tickets to Miami booked today. Hotel charges at the Royal Palm. And I'll need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Do you have documentation of the fraud? The representative asked. Oh, I do, I replied, a hint of satisfaction in my voice. Text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to book travel with his girlfriend after emptying our bank account. I'll be happy to forward them. The professional tone on the other end of the line couldn't quite hide her own satisfaction as she canceled those charges. Mark and Melissa would arrive at the airport tomorrow to find their tickets invalidated, their luxury hotel reservation gone. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Did he really think he had any claim to my grandmother's house? Had his ego grown so massive that he'd forgotten whose name was on the deed? Another buzz. And I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for your half. My half? My business, that I'd built myself, funded myself, grown myself, while he just complained about my long hours and called it my hobby. I poured a glass of wine, the good stuff, the bottle I'd been saving for a truly special occasion. This definitely qualified. Tomorrow, Mark would learn some hard truths about property law and separate assets. But tonight, I would simply enjoy the quiet and plan my next chapter. Morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry texts from Mark. What the heck did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I silenced my phone. Friday was always our busiest day, and I had a new shipment of designer handbags to unpack. Life goes on, even when your husband runs off with a receptionist young enough to be his daughter. Around noon, his mother called. Claire, dear, she began, her tone dripping with false sympathy. Mark told us everything, about how controlling you've been, how you drove him away. He says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with his travel plans. I put her on speaker while calmly arranging a window display. Did he mention emptying our joint account, Barbara? I asked, my voice polite but firm. And charging tickets for him and his girlfriend on our credit card? A heavy silence. Then a week, well, he said you left him no choice, that you'd been cold and distant. Barbara, I cut in, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he bragged about taking our money? Or perhaps the one where he mocked my age? Another pause, longer this time. He did seem a bit cruel, she finally admitted, almost reluctantly. I told him the text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Barbara, I said, already moving on. I've always liked you, but I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with Mark's family during the proceedings. Proceedings? She stammered. Already? Goodbye, Barbara. By late afternoon, Mark's sister, Amanda, was already spreading family gossip through mutual friends. Apparently, Mark and Melissa were stuck at a budget motel near the airport, their Miami dreams temporarily derailed. He'd tried using his personal credit cards, but of course, those had been maxed out for months, another red flag I'd quietly noted. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday. Given his admission of emptying the joint account and the documented credit card fraud, we're in a very strong position to freeze all remaining assets. Has he been served yet? I asked. Not yet, she chuckled, but he'll get the papers at his new motel address. Speaking of which, his girlfriend's social media is providing excellent evidence. She's been posting about their adventure all day, including some choice comments about you. I smiled. My own documentation was a year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, and those invaluable text messages proving his premeditation. Mark had been so focused on his grand escape, he'd never once considered I might be watching, waiting, preparing. My phone buzzed again, one more text from him. You think you're so smart, but I made copies of all the boutique financial records. Half that business is mine. I simply forwarded the text to my lawyer, adding it to the rapidly growing file of Mark's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way about separate assets and business ownership. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply being prepared. The emergency hearing on Monday was, quite frankly, everything I could have hoped for. Mark showed up in his new young wardrobe, designer jeans too tight for his age, a blazer that just screamed midlife crisis. Melissa waited outside, her youth painfully obvious under the harsh courthouse lighting. My lawyer, bless her, presented our evidence methodically, Mark's gleeful text about emptying our account, his credit card fraud, his documented history of hidden expenses. Every single piece, carefully collected over months of quiet observation. Your Honor, Mark's hastily hired lawyer attempted. My client admits to some rash decisions, but Mrs. Harrison's actions have been vindictive and calculating. My lawyer didn't even flinch. Calculating, she countered, her voice sharp. You mean prudent? My client protected her separate assets and maintained detailed records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That's not vindictive, Your Honor. That's smart business. The judge, a formidable woman, reviewed my documentation, The separate property deed to the house, the boutique's incorporation papers in my name only, the careful separation of business and personal finances that Mark had always complained about. Mr. Harrison, the judge addressed Mark directly, her gaze unwavering. You admitted via text message to deliberately emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards to fund a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this? Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I was just trying to make a clean break. By committing financial fraud? The judge raised an eyebrow. And now you're claiming rights to property that documentation shows is clearly separate from marital assets? The business grew during our marriage. Mark's lawyer tried again. My client is entitled to. The business was established before the marriage. My lawyer interrupted smoothly, and Mrs. Harrison maintained strict separation of business and personal finances throughout. We have documentation of every penny invested and earned. I watched Mark's face as reality started sinking in. He thought this would be easy. Empty our accounts, run off with his girlfriend, maybe claim half my business in the divorce. He'd never bothered to understand my insistence on keeping things separate. He'd mocked my careful bookkeeping as obsessive. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct, the judge announced. All shared assets are frozen pending final dissolution. Mr. Harrison is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. But that money's gone. Mark protested, his voice cracking. We spent it on. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it. The judge cut him off, her tone absolutely chilling. And Mr. Harrison, the court takes a very dim view of using shared credit cards to fund adventures with paramours. Outside the courthouse, I heard Melissa asking Mark about their Miami plans. His pathetic response was lost in the confident click of my heels across the marble floor. I was heading back to the business he'd never understood, never respected. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from Mark. He tried claiming the boutique had been his idea, that he'd invested money in its early days. He even suggested he'd been my business partner all along. Claims quickly disproven, of course, by my meticulous records. He's getting desperate, my lawyer observed. His girlfriend's social media shows they're staying at her studio apartment now. Apparently, living on a receptionist's salary isn't quite the glamorous escape he imagined. Mark's family started reaching out, their tone markedly different from their initial accusations. We had no idea, his sister Amanda admitted during an unexpected visit to my boutique, tracing her fingers over a silk scarf. He played the victim so well. But watching how he handled everything, how he acted afterward. I'm ashamed we ever believed him. His mother called again, this time in tears. The things he said about your age, about replacing you with someone younger. I raised him better than that. I thought I did anyway. I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, but now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. Ironically, the boutique thrived, boosted by local gossip about my situation. Women started coming in specifically to show support, often leaving with far more than they'd planned to buy. My ex tried something similar, one customer confided, buying a designer handbag. Thought he'd take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them. My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from Mark, his tone swinging wildly between anger and pathetic manipulation. You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support. I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole even deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Melissa was having second thoughts. Apparently, sharing her studio apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't afford his own place wasn't quite the romantic adventure she'd imagined. The age gap that had seemed so exciting during secret hotel meetings felt very different in the harsh light of reality. My lawyer mentioned yesterday that Melissa had posted about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes, and by this morning, she'd removed her relationship status. I almost felt sorry for Mark. Almost. But then I remembered his text, gleefully telling me he'd emptied our account. The casual cruelty of his comments about my age. The way he'd simply assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt something else, immense pride. Pride in my foresight, my quiet strength, my ability to protect myself while he so thoroughly underestimated me. The final divorce hearing painted a very different picture from Mark's imagined triumph. Gone was his cocky attitude, replaced by barely concealed panic. Melissa was noticeably absent. She'd moved on to a coworker her own age, according to office gossip. Mark showed up in his old clothes. The designer wardrobe apparently returned to help repay the joint account he'd emptied. His lawyer looked utterly exhausted, probably from trying to find loopholes in my perfectly documented separation of assets. Your Honor, Mark's lawyer attempted one last time. Despite the separate property documentation, my client contributed to the growth of his wife's business through moral support. Moral support, my lawyer interrupted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Like these text messages belittling Mrs. Harrison's business as a little shop? Or these social media posts calling it her hobby? The judge had clearly seen enough. The final settlement reflected my careful planning. I kept my house, my business, and my separate assets. Mark? He got his personal possessions and his car, which, ironically, was worth less than he owed on it. You've destroyed me, he hissed as we left the courthouse. I'll have to move back in with my parents. No, Mark, I replied, meeting his furious gaze. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too. His mother was waiting outside, ready to drive him to her house, his new home at 45. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd mocked my age was now living in his childhood bedroom, while I continued running my successful business. You planned this all along, he accused, his voice thick with disbelief. You knew this would happen. No, I said, a quiet strength in my voice. I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records. His mother stepped between us. That's enough, Mark. You've embarrassed yourself enough already. As they walked away, I heard her start in on him. Honestly, what were you thinking? A 20-year-old? Emptying bank accounts? Sending those horrible texts? I watched them disappear into the parking lot, feeling nothing but profound relief. Mark had thought he was writing the ending to our story with that cruel text. Instead, he'd merely set my carefully laid plans in motion. My phone buzzed, not with texts from Mark this time, but with notifications of new orders from my boutique's website. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction he'd imagined. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my boutique had expanded to a second location. The irony was sweet. While Mark struggled to rebuild his life, the little shop he dismissed was thriving. I'd hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was gaining serious traction. News of Mark's situation trickled back through mutual acquaintances. He tried dating apps, but found women his age weren't interested in a middle-aged man living with his parents. Younger women, having heard about his history through office gossip, steered clear. Melissa, apparently, had warned her friends about him, sharing screenshots of his desperate attempts to win her back after she'd left. His career suffered too. The company's HR department had launched an investigation into his relationship with a subordinate, resulting in a formal reprimand. The promotion he'd been expecting went to someone else, someone who didn't have a history of inappropriate relationships with reception staff. He tried to claim age discrimination. Amanda, his sister, told me during an unexpected visit to the boutique. Said they were punishing him for dating someone younger. She shook her head. HR just added that complaint to his file. I was surprised to see her in my store, but her presence spoke volumes about how thoroughly Mark had alienated his own family. I know we didn't support you at first, she admitted, running her fingers over a silk scarf. He played the victim so well. But watching how he handled everything, how he acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed him. My lawyer kept me updated on Mark's continued attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Each petition was denied, his claims of unfair distribution dismissed based on the irrefutable evidence of his own actions. He actually tried arguing that his text about emptying the account was just a joke. She told me, laughing. The judge asked if that made theft less illegal. The boutique's success brought unexpected validation. Local business magazines wanted to feature my story, not as a scorned wife, but as a savvy businesswoman who'd protected her interests. Young entrepreneurs asked for advice about keeping business and personal finances separate. The best protection is preparation, I told one young woman who reminded me a little of Melissa. And always trust your instincts. Mark's mother called occasionally, usually after he'd done something particularly self-destructive. He tried online gambling, hoping for a quick fix to his financial problems. He got involved with a pyramid scheme that promised fast returns. Each desperate attempt to recover his former lifestyle just dug him deeper into trouble. I don't know where we went wrong with him, she sighed during one call. His father and I offered to help him get back on his feet if he'd just take responsibility for his actions, but he's still blaming everyone else, you, Melissa, his company, the judge. I listened politely, but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my problem anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a 3rd boutique location and a possible expansion into luxury accessories. The only reminder of Mark's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office, his final text before I blocked his number, "Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age." Below it sat my latest business award. Proof that sometimes, the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a grand opening for my 3rd boutique location. The event attracted local media, and the story they wanted to tell wasn't about my failed marriage. It was about a successful businesswoman expanding her brand. Mark's betrayal had become a mere footnote in my success story. During the event, Melissa unexpectedly walked in. She looked younger than ever, or maybe I just felt that much stronger. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her purse like a shield. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I believed everything he told me about how you were cold, controlling, how you didn't support his dreams. I continued arranging a display of designer sunglasses. Those weren't his dreams, Melissa, I corrected gently. They were escapes. There's a difference. I know that now, she paused, then added, he tried to move in when you froze the accounts. Thought my studio apartment would be temporary. After 2 weeks of him complaining about the size of my closet and suggesting I take out a loan for a bigger place, I understood what you meant about the difference between dreams and escapes. I actually laughed. Let me guess, I said, he had big plans, but no way to fund them? Exactly. Everything was going to work out once his investments paid off, once he got that promotion, once his cryptocurrency definitely increased in value. She shook her head. I'm dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a small apartment, but at least we're building something real. After she left, my assistant manager whispered, was that the girlfriend? No, I replied, smiling. That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did. Speaking of lessons, I gestured to a young couple examining our designer handbags. Let's talk about your idea for expanding our accessories line. The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of independence, of resilience, of the power of preparation. Young entrepreneurs often sought my advice, and I always emphasized the importance of protecting their assets. Mark's mother called one last time, not to discuss Mark, but to thank me. You taught our family an important lesson, she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. About enabling bad behavior, about making excuses for cruelty. Mark's still living at home, still blaming everyone else for his problems, but we're not defending him anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. I thought about that legacy as I reviewed plans for a 4th location. Mark had intended to diminish me, to trade me in for a younger model and take half of everything I built. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Mark filed another petition to revisit the settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay court costs. Thought you'd enjoy that. I smiled, thinking of him in his childhood bedroom, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been determined the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. 2 years after Mark's cruel text message, I received an invitation to speak at a women's business conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about building and protecting a successful business. My story had evolved from cautionary tale to inspiration. During the Q&A session, a woman asked about keeping business and personal finances separate. My husband says I'm being paranoid, that marriage means sharing everything. My ex-husband said the same thing, I replied, meeting her gaze directly, right up until he tried to claim half my business in our divorce. Trust your instincts. Protection isn't paranoia. The boutique chain had grown to 5 locations, each more successful than the last. The little shop Mark had mocked now employed 30 people and had been featured in several national magazines. Through mutual friends, I heard Mark had finally moved out of his parents' house into a small apartment above a garage. He'd had to take a lower-paying job after his former company downsized, eliminating his position during restructuring. His dating profile still listed him as young at heart, though his profile photo was clearly outdated. Melissa, ironically, had become a regular customer at my original boutique location. She'd earned her business degree and started her own social media consulting company. You inspired me, she told me once, showing how a woman can build something lasting instead of falling for empty promises. I kept Mark's cruel text message framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Below it hung a sign that read, "Success is the best revenge." At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my original boutique, I stood addressing my employees and loyal customers. The space had been transformed from a single little shop into the flagship store of a thriving business empire. Mark's mother attended, though I hadn't sent her an invitation. She waited until the crowd thinned to approach me. I saw Mark yesterday, she said, smoothing her designer dress, one she'd bought from my store. He's not doing well. Still blaming everyone. But I wanted you to know, what you built here, Claire, it's incredible. You didn't just save yourself. You showed us all what true strength looks like. Thank you. I just smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. My revenge wasn't loud or vengeful. It was simply the quiet, powerful roar of my own incredible success. That, for me, was enough.